The Kia EV9 is a car I am very fond of. It's one of the best electric cars currently on sale, and as a total package, it is really hard to beat if you want a large 3-row electric SUV that drives good, that is nice to live with, and just functions for a lot of people. But it's not perfect, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the 9 things I hate about this car, the 9 worst things about the Kia EV9. If you saw my video 11 things I love about the EV9, I talked about it being generally a nice driving car, and that is true, but it does have a few quirks that I want to address in this video. A few quirks that, well, aren't deal breakers, but just I don't like at all. So first off, it's the steering. And this seems to be an issue with Kias of late, in my opinion. I don't think that they have particularly good steering. I think steering is one of the weakest links in any Kia product the past 2 years. This applies to the EV6 GT, which is an awesome performance car that just has weird and strange steering. And this also has weird and strange steering. So first off, in normal mode, it's just too heavy for what this is. I don't understand why the steering has to be this heavy, because it doesn't make the car more sporty. And then you have the steering resistance as you give the steering more lock. You know, as you go through a turn and giving it a little bit more lock to tighten up the turn. I mean, this is something that is lacking in modern cars in general, but in this car, it's just the same resistance if you're at this much steering angle or this much steering angle or this much, and if you're going this amount of speed or this amount of speed. It just feels the same all the time. Back in the day, like Gran Turismo 2 or 3, like decades ago, I had, you know, a steering wheel pedal setup with my PlayStation, which wasn't force feedback, right? Just this normal, like, spring-loaded steering wheel setup, and this feels that way, and that doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. It just feels weird. And now, it being slippery outside, the steering wheel and the steering just seems to be doing strange things that I really can't explain. Maybe it's because of the cold, and once you know the tires let go in the snow or the ice, I just get strange feedback, but it just doesn't feel natural at all. Driving this car at a pace now when it's slippery, which you actually shouldn't be doing, but if you were to, you know, encounter a corner at too high of speed because you don't realize it's that slippery, the way the car behaves sometimes is just unnatural and unpredictable. So I don't jive with this steering at all. I just don't like it. I think it almost ruins the driving experience for me, to be quite honest. I don't understand this recent trend of trying to make steering wheels other than round. It's almost round, the steering wheel, but it is square up top and square on the bottom, making it a squircle. And it's just annoying to use because it doesn't give any benefit to the usability, because if it was round here and here, it wouldn't make any difference at all, other than it would be nicer to use. So car makers, please stop trying to make your steering wheels squares or triangles or yokes or joysticks. What's wrong with just a traditional round steering wheel that has worked for more than 40 years at this point? I do appreciate that the EV9 has an electrically adjustable steering wheel with a nice joystick here on the column for easy and quick access. That seems to be disappearing in modern cars. So I really wanted to point that out because that is really nice. But what I don't like is that this car doesn't have a steering wheel that comes close enough for my comfort, for my ideal driving position. I'm sitting in a nice position now. Maybe I can put the seat up just a little bit because I was sitting with my jacket, and then I put the seat a little bit back. But the steering wheel is just a little bit too far away for me, and this is something I've experienced in these non-luxury brands, and when I speak to friends, they have the same experience. You know, Hyundai, Kia, Volkswagen, Ford, etc. Once you move into the luxury and premium brands, they seem to have more adjustability in the steering wheel. So that means either I'm sitting too far away from the steering wheel, or I have to set the seat in a more upright position than what I prefer, or I have to move the seat closer to the steering wheel, meaning I have less room and space. This video is sponsored by Kempower. Kempower manufactures some of the most unique and best DC fast chargers on the market. Their satellite chargers offers flexibility and a user experience like no other. As a user, you don't have to think about what speed your car can charge at and then choose a charger that matches that speed. Kempower satellites with their load balancing system does all of this for you. All you have to do is connect and let Kempower do the rest. A huge thanks to Kempower for sponsoring this video. The adaptive cruise control function in this car is pretty good, and so is the auto steer. And I really like that the auto steer can be turned on and off with a button here on the steering wheel, as well as the lane keep assist. But what I find really strange that I may get used to if I own this car is that the adaptive cruise control and auto steer are not tethered together. So in almost every car I've driven, if not every other car, once you turn on adaptive cruise control, it also activates auto steer if auto steer is activated. Usually you can turn that on and off in a menu, but those two things are tethered. And once you turn off adaptive cruise control, that means auto steer is turned off. And that is very logical. That is the way it should be done in my opinion, because where you're using adaptive cruise control is usually on open stretches of roads, country roads, big back roads and motorways. And when you're not using it, you don't want auto steer. But sometimes when I'm driving this car, like I forget it because I turn off adaptive cruise control and then the car's just like turning on itself and I'm like, oh yeah, auto steer is engaged. So you have to turn that off separately with a button. I find that strange. Why would anybody ever want to use auto steer but controlling the car's speed manually? That just doesn't make sense to me. Earlier in this video, I talked about this in general being a nice car to drive, and that is true. And yeah, I'm gonna get to the beeping later on in this video also, because that's something I absolutely do hate. But in general, this is a nice car to drive, except for the steering being weird, and that may be just because in winter. I don't know. We're gonna give that the benefit of the doubt. But another thing that's weird about this car is that, and this may just be personal preference, you may not experience this driving the EV9, is that it kind of feels a little bit like a minivan sometimes, not all the time. Maybe on a specific stretch of road, maybe it's just sometimes it feels like a minivan, depending on my mood. Who the heck knows? I can't really pinpoint why I feel that way, but I do have some thoughts. So first off, I love large SUVs. I've had 2 Volvo XC90s. I love them to death. This channel started the earlier days with those cars. I love driving the Mercedes EQS SUV, and I can't wait till the EQG comes to market and also the fully electric Range Rover. Those are 2 cars I'm considering to get myself. So I love large SUVs, always loved them, like since as far as I can remember. My mom, when I was a kid, had a Jeep Grand Cherokee. I love that car. So I love large SUVs. So I should love this, and I do like it, but I don't love driving it, right? And I thought to myself, why does it feel like a minivan sometimes, or even a car rather than a large SUV? And I think it's because, which brings us to my next point, is you can't have this car with air suspension. I think a large, big SUV on air suspension just gives a completely different driving experience to a large or medium-sized SUV on normal suspension, because once you get that air suspension, you get this waftiness, this suppleness, this just extra level of insulation and comfort that you just don't get with a car on normal suspension. And the suspension is good on this car. This car is really taut and nice to drive. Really nice body control, but I don't actually think that gives anything to the driving experience. You know, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, on the other hand, has nice and big suspension travel, is soft and wafty. This isn't that. This is much closer to the EV6 to drive. Short suspension travel, short motions, and just a little bit more choppiness. It's never uncomfortable, but it's just, you know, it just moves a lot more instead of isolating you from the road. I think the way the Ioniq 5 drives is more befitting to this car than the way this car drives is befitting to this car. Okay, I finally stopped now because I can't take any more of it, and that is the speed limit warning, bing and bong. So we're gonna turn it off. So this is something that's mandatory for all cars in Europe from 2024. And what's even more annoying than that it is mandatory, which I don't mind, but what's more annoying is that it has to reactivate the system, the warning, every time you turn on and off the ignition. And that means every time you get into the car after hopping out of it, it resets and you have to turn it off. So the audible warning isn't actually mandatory for 2024. It's only a visual warning, so that this car has an audible warning on top of the visual is super annoying. But the way you turn it off is super annoying because, as I've said in this video, Hyundai and Kia do something really nicely and really well in my opinion, and that is the way you deactivate the lane keep assist there. And that is just holding this button for a few seconds. Now it's on, as you guys can see there, and when it goes amber, it's off. So that's super easy to turn off. But to turn off the speed limit warning, you have to go into, let's go to home first, and then you go into setup, and then you go into vehicle, and then you go into driver assistance, and then you go over here. And while driving, that's a little bit of a reach because this is a big car. Speed limit warning, and then you scroll down, and then you turn it off, which is just so many button presses and so many hoops that is just annoying. I really hate it. I do commend them that I don't have to do it like twice, like I don't have to do it with lane keep assist, which you have to do with a lot of the other cars, but yeah, so that is pretty nice. The guy from Kia Norway has talked about they giving Kia feedback that they want like a quick menu. And I've heard this from other brands like Skoda also, like a quick drop-down menu every time you get into the car, like you want to go to your previous settings and you just press yes. I can't wait for that to be a reality in cars because this setup here, I don't know of any car journalist, any car YouTuber, or any person that thinks this is a good way to do speed monitoring and assistance. It's just cumbersome, everybody turns it off, and it's just annoying. This being the top trim GT line, it comes standard with a Meridian branded sound system. And I'm just gonna say it right out, I may be more critical in this era than other people because of the sound systems I've grown up with, the sound systems I've had in my homes, the sound systems I've had in cars I've owned. So I may be more critical than a lot of other people, but I'm disappointed about this sound system, especially it being branded as Meridian, which is a top tier sound system that we can find in other luxury cars where they sound great. In this car, is just lacking. So I don't have the specs on hand now, but I'm going to put, the numbers of speakers, the channels of amplification, and also the total amplifier output for you guys so you have the specs now. I'm going to put on a song now that I've played a few times before in other videos, testing sound systems. So stationary, listening to the sound system, it sounds okay. It doesn't have the clearest, high tones. It's not too bright up top, which I do appreciate. I've, spent a week now fiddling with the equalizer and stuff like that. And down low, it's just a little bit muddy and doesn't offer nearest enough punch for when you're driving at, motorway speeds. Then it completely falls apart where you're like maxing out the amplifier output and it just, falls completely on its face. So lower speeds is okay with the correct type of music. I'm now using, my phone with a cable to a sound source that is better and at higher bit rate than, what you would find on Spotify. So this is like best case scenario. And here it sounds okay. But once you are on the move, it's really not good. And compared to other sound systems in cars that, you know, are at this price point, it's a real weak point of this car. The last thing I hate about the EV9, the worst thing about the EV9, the weakest thing about the EV9 has to be its price, because this car is and can get very, very expensive. Especially here in Norway, there's only one version available, and that is the all-wheel drive GT line that is almost 90,000 euros. And yes, this is a great package. Like, the package of this car, like everything you're getting is pretty awesome, but I think at 90,000 euros, it doesn't make a lot of sense, because for 90,000 euros in Norway, you can get a pretty nicely spec'd Volvo EX90, which I haven't driven yet, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be better than this car in almost every way. As I said in this video, I've owned several Volvo XC90s, and the EX90 is basically the updated new generation XC90, just electric. It's as big as this on the inside, almost, like very small differences. It's more luxurious, it's nicer when it comes to materials, and I'm pretty sure with air suspension it's going to be nicer to drive. The sound system is going to be awesome, it's going to be more quiet, more comfortable, and it's just a brand that's going to appeal more to the luxury buyer. Like, it's going to be easier for most people to spend 90,000 euros on a large 3-row Volvo than a large 3-row Kia. So until this car, you know, comes in Norway as, you know, a lesser trim level, it doesn't make sense to buy this spec'd out version. So I would recommend, if you're looking at this car, it's a great car. I really like the EV9, but I think just wait until, you know, you can get a nicely spec'd one for like 80,000 euros, because I'm pretty sure once you get, you know, the premium trim level or whatever they're gonna call it, with, you know, more you know, normal functions and spec, it's going to be like 80,000 euros for basically the same car as this. So guys, let me know what you think down below about the things I hate. Do you agree? Don't you agree? I hope you enjoyed today's video. So if you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below. And for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later. Goodbye.